That's Old Faithful Inn that you're looking at. There's Old Faithful Geyser. And we're in Yellowstone's Upper Geyser Basin. I've just loaded my camera for a moment so I could get on my bicycle. Look at that sign coming up on the right, warning you about buffalo. Even though you're in an area where there are so many people, this is one of the country's top tourist attractions, there's still obviously the possibility of bumping into wildlife. Now there on the right is part of what's known as Geyser Hill, and there are a couple of hikes that you can take up and around Geyser Hill, and you can see those in our YouTube channel, and you can also see them if you go to our site virtualyellowstonetours.com. That's virtualyellowstonetours.com, and there's Geyser Hill. Again, you could see a lot more of it. Coming up on our right, where you see that white area, this is Castle Geyser. And the white is sinter. That is one of the minerals that is brought up from underground when the geysers erupt or when hot springs overflow. Castle Geyser is one of the largest cone geysers anywhere in the world, and I'll try and remember to get back to that and tell you the difference between cone geysers and fountain geysers. At the moment, Castle is erupting about every 10 to 12 hours or so, and its fountain reaches up to about 90 feet, which is about 27 meters, lasts about 20 minutes, and it's then followed by what's called a steam phase. On the right there is a trail that we could take to get to, amongst other things, Grand Geyser. Now I've mentioned, and there is center again, those trees that you see there, we call them bobby socks trees, and gosh, I know there's so many stories that I'm starting and then I'm going to have to come back to. I was telling you that the trail that we saw on the right led to, amongst other things, Grand Geyser. Now there are 5 geysers in Yellowstone's Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. There's Old Faithful, of course, there is Grand Geyser, there is Castle Geyser, and all 3 of those are either behind us or, in Grand Geyser's case, off to the right of us. And ahead of us are the other 2 geysers in the Upper Geyser Basin which have their eruption times predicted. They are Riverside Geyser, which will be off the trail a little to the right, and I'll point it out to you. That there is the Firehole River coming into view. Those of you who've seen several of these virtual Yellowstone tours will know that the Firehole River is a thermal river, and this section of trail that we're doing now is incorporated into several of our other longer videos as well, so please excuse me if you hear the same stories repeated from time to time, because, as I say, some of these sections of videos are used elsewhere as well. When I say that the Firehole River is a thermal river, what I mean is that a lot of the water in the Firehole River comes from thermal features. Now there are 4 sorts of thermal features. There's geysers, which we've all heard of, there's hot springs, which we've heard of, but then there are also mud pots as well as fumaroles. Now we're not going to talk a lot about mud pots or fumaroles, that there's a bridge over the Firehole River which also leads to Grand Geyser and the Grand Geyser area as well as Geyser Hill. We're not going to talk really about mud pots or fumaroles in this video, or that, by the way, coming into view on the right, and I'm sorry my finger is a little in the way, that there is Giant Geyser. Giant Geyser is the one on the right where there is steam coming off. To the left of Giant Geyser is Bijou Geyser. Giant Geyser very seldom erupts, but when it does erupt, it is an extraordinarily powerful geyser, possibly the most powerful geyser in the world. It is so powerful that if you get close up to Giant Geyser, and there is Giant on the right again, you'll see that it actually ripped itself apart in one of its explosions. So what's left of Giant Geyser, which is a cone geyser, and by the way, off on the right is another trail which goes to Grand Geyser, that there is Grotto Geyser. Grotto Geyser is almost always erupting. Its eruptions can last up to over a day. So it's not unusual to come past and see that on the right is Spa Geyser. And then also off to the right is Riverside Geyser. Now Riverside Geyser is another one of the big 5 geysers that I mentioned to you, which has its eruption times predicted. Riverside Geyser is one of Yellowstone's most predictable geysers, mainly because there are no other thermal features close to it which may interfere with Riverside's plumbing. And on the right there is the other trail to the small loop to Riverside Geyser, and if we look up the Firehole River, we briefly saw where Riverside Geyser was on the left-hand side of the river. Coming up on our left now is the boardwalk that'll take us to Morning Glory Pool, and on the right is the trailhead for Artemisia Geyser. That is a trail that's also featured on many of our other Yellowstone shorter hikes. Well, let me put my bicycle down and we can take the trail up towards Morning Glory. Morning Glory is really one of Yellowstone's iconic sites. It's just so incredibly colorful, isn't it? Unfortunately, the reason that Morning Glory Pool is so brilliantly colorful is because it is dying. Morning Glory Pool relies on a source of heat coming up from underground, and as the heat has lessened over the years, so more and more organisms are able to survive in Morning Glory Pool. Normally, when you see a hot spring that is really healthy, it'll be very blue or even a grey color, and you'll only see the colors right on the very edges. This is because there are very few what's called thermophiles or heat-loving organisms which are able to survive in these hot springs. But as the temperatures of the hot springs get lower, so more and more organisms, more and more thermophiles are able to survive within the hot springs such as Morning Glory. Over the years, Morning Glory's temperature has decreased as a result of both earthquakes shifting the underground plumbing, as well as people throwing things into Morning Glory Pool, which you really shouldn't be doing. What happens is when you throw something in, even if it's something really, really small, the sinter that I mentioned to you, that white stuff that you can see on the edges of the pool, the sinter adheres to the things that get thrown in, and in no time what has been thrown in becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it eventually clogs up the plumbing from underground, and this stops both the heat and the water coming up from underground. We'll leave the boardwalk at Morning Glory behind, and we'll start making our way down the Artemisia Trail. It's always been a bit of a mystery to me why more people don't take the Artemisia Trail. Its trailhead is in such a prominent position right next to Morning Glory Pool, and it comes out the other side on the Grand Loop Road. On our left here now is a side view of Morning Glory. One of the beauties of the Artemisia Trail, as well as various of the other trails around the Upper Geyser Basin, is that in just minutes, literally minutes, you can be away from the hustle and bustle of the crowds at Old Faithful and the Upper Geyser Basin, enjoying the peace and tranquility of the forest. Look how beautiful that blue-grey hot spring is. Remember, if you're going to be on one of these more remote trails, even though you're so close to a well-known area, make sure that you take your bear spray with you. You never know when you may come across a bear. It looks like there's some thermal features right next to the river, so we're going to go take a look. That's Amber ahead of me. She's one of our West Yellowstone team. And just as we come down to the river, the sun comes out. The steam that I saw was coming out from this pool over here. There's also that across the river. This is just such a beautiful sight anyway. And there's a buffalo there, grazing away peacefully by itself. This is Artemisia Geyser, as you probably saw from that sign. This is the first time I've ever seen it. And there is the Grand Loop Road. We parked our car at the Daisy Geyser Trailhead, which is off in that direction over there, so we have a short walk.
Out of shape and being able to enjoy it. It's like, I don't know, it's interesting.
That's Black Sand Basin across the way. And another buffalo just behind those cars. Thank you for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. If you enjoy this virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Thank you, and see you in Yellowstone.